Back to the special edition of The Tea with April with Democratic ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Greg Meeks. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, April.
Congressman, there's so much going on as it relates to foreign affairs, as it relates to the world and the United States. But first, let's talk about this issue of Iran. We saw this press conference with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as well as with Pete Hegseth, the head of the DOD, Secretary of the Department of Defense. They did not say anything about if there was ability for Iran to regenerate, regroup, remake what is perceived to be uranium enrichment, attempts to make a nuclear weapon, or even if they did find or they moved uranium enrichment. What is the case and what do you know about this?
Well, first of all, April, let me just say this. Clearly, what they tried to do was some propaganda. No one ever questioned the job that our U.S. military did. If we talk about on a technical aspect of it, what they did their jobs. Nobody's questioning or downgrading what they did. They did it perfectly. It was a miraculous operation only done by members, and it could only been done by the United States of America. That's not the issue of which we're talking about here. And as the general said, all he could talk about legitimately is what the operation was, that they hit their targets, etc. But what damage was actually caused, that is done by the intelligence community. And the intelligence community was not there. And many times we talk about people that's going to be on the ground. And so folks got to get there. It takes time to do it. So it would seem to me, first of all, instead of them yelling at the press and going crazy the way Hegstaff did,
over leaks.
Yeah. Right. The president, and now the president saying that he's not going to allow members of Congress to have access to classified information. Well, that's not going to stand and shouldn't stand with my Republican colleagues either. Because what we're trying to do is to find out is how long now will it take for Iran to revitalize, if they can, their nuclear program. And some say it's 4 months, some say it's 6 months, some say it's a year, but we need to know. We need to know whether or not the enriched uranium was moved or not. Now, the president should not be able to say that everything is absolutely, whatever the word he used, destroyed, until all the facts are in. And so we're questioning, and we wanted to make sure. I had not been, to this day, April, I've not been briefed on anything. As the former chair and ranking member of Foreign Affairs, I have not received a briefing at all. And allegedly tomorrow, they will have a briefing with the House. I think today they're doing one with the Senate. So I'm interested to seeing who's going to do the briefing, because I hope it's not just those cheerleaders for the president. I hope to hear from the military and the intelligence experts, so that we know, and I can get information from them. And I'm hoping I will get additional classified information. It wasn't a member of Congress that leaked anything. So we're trying to get to the facts of where we are and what damage was done and how long will it take for, as far as our intelligence is concerned, Iran to maybe try to do this, build a nuclear weapon.
So the strikes happened last Saturday, and it's been almost a week. Did your Republican colleagues get the information, or did Congress not get the information at all? Because Democrats didn't get it, but did Republicans get it at least?
From what I understand, only Speaker Johnson and the majority leader on the Senate side. But Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer only got a cursory call from the White House right after the strike and have not had anything since.
So the founding fathers built into all the pillars of this nation checks and balances, right? Each judiciary, legislative, and executive, each branch is supposed to be able to work independently from the other, but be checked by the other, correct? Now, how serious is this? If indeed going forward, as we are engaged with Iran, and Iran is struck back, and there was strikes between Iran and Israel, and then also we're hearing reports of President Trump trying to invade other places. How serious is this if you are not given intel on the plan, the moment that it happens, and the fallout after? How serious is this, sir?
It's a violation of the Constitution. And that's why myself, Ranking Member Smith of the House Armed Services Committee, and Representative Himes of the House Intel Committee have introduced a resolution, a war crimes resolution, setting out specifically that if the president wants to continue to do airstrikes or any kind of aggressive form of military action, you must first come to Congress to lay out why it is necessary. So he clearly did not do that in this instance. The exceptions, I know the speaker has talked about Article 2 operations that the president could work under, but that's if there's an imminent threat. And so you need to show that there was an imminent threat from Iran. And I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that there was any threat. So we want to make sure that we do that. And so war powers resolution is what I'm talking about that we submitted. So, but there's nothing that came from the president that showed in it. And all we're asking for, I'm asking for information. And I should get it. Every administration, one of the things I say, April, I've been here long enough. I was here on 9/11. And after 9/11, George Bush did not go straight. He came to Congress and we had hearings in our committee. I was allowed to talk to, and I wasn't the ranking member at the time or chair. I was allowed to go to the Pentagon and I talked to generals separately from that. I talked then to the Secretary of State. I talked to whoever I wanted to talk to make my decision. That information was made accessible to me. I was in SCIFs. None of that is happening here. Even though I came to the conclusion that the information that I received in Iraq was not enough to vote for it, that there was not an imminent threat, that there was no connection to Iraq and 9/11. I had
weapons
access
of mass destruction, WMD.
That's right. I had access. I have no access so that I can make any decision here thus far from this particular president.
And that the claims of WMD that wound up being false, this kind of reminds me of that. Does it to you when your intel tells you, when your DNI, your Director of National Intelligence, tells you that that basically there's not that much credible evidence to support what they're saying, but you take the intelligence from Israel and you use their intelligence to support it. It kind of reminds me, if you close one eye and turn your head and look down, it kind of reminds me of weapons of mass destruction that we didn't find. Remember?
I remember, but I should be able to get that information, even if it's not to the general public, because of the responsibility that I have. Yeah. And I can deduct, I have the ability, as I did then, to deduct whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
Because when I talked back then in Iraq, and I talked to a number of individuals, including the Secretary of State, I was able to ask him some questions. And he answered them to me. And when he answered, I knew then that there was no imminent threat from Iraq. That's why I voted no. So here in this case, I'm doing the same thing. I did the same thing with President Obama. When it was issues and questions with going into Libya and going into Syria, etc. He wanted Congress to make a vote on Syria. And Congress refused at that particular time because they wanted to play politics with him. But we've got to have that response. The Constitution says that responsibility belongs in the Congress. And we should and cannot give that responsibility away to the president. And so what we're trying to do is to make sure that now that the bond is out the door, I believe he committed an act illegally already, that it does not happen again. Another reason why we need to know the situation on the ground, because you've heard the president say and others that if it's not good enough, he wants to strike again. There may be a future strike. Well, if there is going to be a future strike, he must come to Congress first.
If he comes to Congress first, it still makes you guys have to vote and come together to figure out indeed if this is something that you're going to do. Go to war, right? War Powers Act. But what he's trying to do apparently is skirt your approval, skirt the Constitution, skirt the checks and balances, if you will. And what does this look like going forward if indeed he continues to do this? Will there be an effort to slap his hands and change it, or what happens? Because he's done this unilaterally, and what's to change that in the future?
Well, number one, what should change it is Congress, both Democrats and Republicans coming together to say that we're going to take care of our responsibilities. You know, you've got some Republicans that already, says that the president broke his word to them because he said that he was not going to get involved in any more wars. And here he is getting involved in a war. And some that don't like what that, so they can join us. Many of the Democrats to say the way that we stop that is to work collectively. If we came together with those numbers based upon what our responsibilities are as members of Congress, whether we're Democrats or Republicans, to retain what should be within our jurisdiction, then that should be we should be able to stop him. But if we rubber stamp, or all of the Republicans rubber stamp him, so we only need 3 Republicans to vote with us to hold our thing, to hold our principles up or our responsibilities up.
Are you fearful that this president is trying to move in a direction of war? I mean, he did this with Iran, going off of Israeli intelligence. There are reports that he wants to invade Mexico to deal with the cartels. There are reports on so many different things that he wants to move in. There are reports, guys, that he wants to move in to get Greenland. I mean, what is your greatest fear as we're hearing these reports and you have not been consulted with? You meaning Congress, you meaning the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee?
Well, look, the greatest fear is that we move to an authoritarian society, which is what he wants. The greatest fear is that he completely disregards Congress, and the American people don't support Congress when we do stand up and fight it. And that the courts, we go to the courts, and that the courts should uphold the Constitution. We've all have taken oaths of office, not to an individual, but to a Constitution. I do believe that collectively within the body, that's what we should be standing up for. That's what our responsibility is, and we need to do our jobs. And if we don't do our jobs in that regards, I would hope that the American people then understand, and then when they have to vote about it and not just talk about it.
Is Iran over? Is this the retaliation over? Do you believe there are going to be lone wolves, sleeper cells, etc. here, or any more strikes? Do you believe this is over?
Look, the only way that this is going to be over is if we use diplomacy. Diplomacy is the way to end. When Barack Obama was president, we entered into a diplomatic agreement with Iran, the JCPOA. And that set standards. And for the first time, they're trying to say this is the first time that Iran doesn't have the ability to do anything. No, that's not true. Under the JCPOA, we had access to Iran. We had we had governments with more than one. We had, the EU and China and Russia all working together in this regards. We had the the international, what is it? The IAEA go in. They had access to all of the facilities to look, to determine, and everybody that was watching said Iran was applying to the agreement. And it was due to sunset in 15 years. And people were complaining about that agreement because it was due to sunset in 15 years. But we knew for that time that there was no bomb that was being developed, no enrichment that was continuing to create a nuclear weapon. Now, after Trump pulled out of the agreement, because it was him, we lost whatever trust that we were trying to build in that time, because the Iranians say incorrectly, we had a deal, we were living up to the deal, and you pulled out the deal. So we can't trust you to keep your word in making a deal. And then on top of that, from all that I'm hearing so far, even with the bombing, Iran could be still just months away or a year away from building another facility. So we can't bomb our way out of this. We have to negotiate diplomatically our way out of this. And that's the only way that we're going to transform and change the Middle East. We've got to use diplomacy.
Got to use diplomacy. And the man of peace happens to be Marco Rubio, the State Department, the man of war, DOD, Pete Hegseth. But let's talk about this retaliation, or do you see this as retaliation? Now in Los Angeles, we've been seeing more migrants being raided, but it's not just Hispanic people. It's not just Latino and Latino brothers and sisters and cousins. We're now seeing Iranians being arrested. What do you say to that? Is it a coincidence, or is this targeted raids on Iran residents here or migrants here?
Well, the president said that he was only going to be focused on those individuals who were criminals, who had committed criminal acts in the United States. And those were the folks that he was going to deport. And it's clear that he's doing much more than that. He's clear that he's violating the due process rights of individuals. It's clear that he is not acting according to the Constitution, and often in obeying rules made by the court system. That's what he's attempting to do. So I can't say that Iran is, what that if and when or what type of retaliation that the Iranians may do, because I don't have that information. And if I get it on a classified basis, I couldn't talk about it. But I don't have it. So I know that all over the country, I know, for example, in my city of New York, the mayor is taking precautionary procedures to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, and we try to dot every I and cross every T in that regards. And I believe that's taking place all over America to try to make sure that we don't have, because I've heard this thing about terrorists, Iranian cells being around, but I have there's been no credible evidence that there's any imminent danger at this time, but folks are being very cautious and looking out for any and all types of activity.
So staying on immigration, what are your thoughts about this effort to deport migrants and send them to countries that they don't even know anything about, like Sudan? I mean, that's happening now. Sudan is very complicated, number one. But those who are said to be illegal migrants are raided and then deported to Sudan. If you are coming from Mexico, you're going to Sudan. Tell me about that. Is that the courts are saying it can happen? What is this?
That is insane to me and troubling. Sudan is in the middle of a civil war. They have no facilities, no jurisdictions, no judge, no courts, no prisons. To do that is just unbelievably inhumane. We're supposed to be a humane country of values. That just does not make sense at all. Look, I know the ruling of the Supreme Court recently. I just think that we're better than that as a country. We, have other countries that are looking at us now and saying, this is not the United States that we know. It's hard for me when I travel and or talk to other countries, for me to say to them that they've got to stop doing some of the things that we see that are inhumane, when in fact the United States is doing itself. So this is and it's a violation, I think, of the individuals here, because anybody here should have access to due process. So oftentimes what you see them doing is picking people up and shipping them to these places without even a hearing, without any legal proceeding, before they could go to court. Just picking them up, and often with masked men, Gestapo-like, throwing them into a truck and then sending them wherever, and nobody knowing where they were going. And some of them have families here, and some of them never commit. They're not those that have committed or crime, but even those that have, you should be going back to some place where you can be appropriately incarcerated, not in a place like South Sudan, which is just is horrendous doing that, and that's not who we should be as a country.
But what is so odd, Africa is now in play. He didn't engage in Africa fully. When the first term, he didn't go there. And he's had the South African president here to prove a point, basically about the fact that there was some uprising going on, and the Afrikaners, white Afrikaners, were being hurt. And that turned out to be the Congo, the video that he showed. But does Africa play a role, do you think, in security and safety in the midst of this upheaval, this what people are calling chaos from this president?
Well, no, Africa is not and should not be used, as the president is now trying to use it, as a dumping ground for people that they just want to deport from this country. That's what, not only in Sudan and in Rwanda is happening, and you see it spreading and trying to make certain deals that they're keeping secret. They're not transparent about it at all. That is not the way we should be talking when we talk about Africa. Is about investment opportunities and creating in real partnership the youngest and the fastest growing continent of the planet, with all of opportunities to work collectively together for the future. Not in the way that this president sees it, because we heard what he thought about most and many of the African countries from his last term, and he's acting that way continuously today.
And if the president can use the F-bomb and J.D. Vance can put the finger up, the middle finger up, I guess I can say, and this is calm compared to the president, for those of you who didn't know, he called Haiti and African nations shithole nations. So, yeah, little potty mouth there, but we're going to, if the president can say it, he's supposed to be the moral.
Hey, look, I tell you, you can't have your kids watch the news anymore.
You cannot. I was like, ooh, and then J.D. Vance did the bird. But let me ask you this. This is kind of leading into my last question. Do you remember where you were July 21st, 2024? I remember where I was. I remember the day. And that day, did you imagine that we were going to be this? And that day, to remind everybody, July 21st, 2024 was the day that Joe Biden said that he was not going to run for president. And it just so happened the congressman and I have together. Yeah, we were together. It was like the whole New York contingent was there. Tish James, Yvette Clarke, Hakeem Jeffries. The mayor was supposed to be there, and Chuck Schumer. But you were there, but everybody was all abuzz because Joe Biden had decided he wasn't going to run. And I'm so embarrassed for this, but I'm in my news sense. We were at a church in Brooklyn. And my news says I went and grabbed the congressman, and his wife was like, "Where's she taking him?" But it was such a big day. It was such a big day. Did you ever imagine that day that we would be here in this moment, this chaos?
Absolutely not. When I heard that the president was stepping down, and then I heard that he was supporting the vice president, Kamala Harris, to be the Democratic nominee. I thought we were on the way to create history again
Yeah,
in the United States and continue to move in the right direction. Because not only was she an African American, and but she also had Indian heritage, which was historic, and she also would have been the first woman vice president,
yeah,
woman president,
yeah,
which would have made a difference. So I was full of, you know, hope at that time that America would be moving forward and not going backward, that we would be humane and not inhumane, that we would, negotiate and use our soft power and not just think that we can just blow everybody up and use our hard power. So
yeah,
I thought that we'd be headed in the opposite direction. And I think most of the American people thought also we'd be headed in the opposite direction. I also thought that we'd be able to bring and start fixing the economy as we were coming out of the greatest pandemic that this country has seen, because that still was coming out of that. And that we would then have an individual talking about the economy. How do we begin to bring prices down, reduce, and create more housing and fix it so that everything becomes more affordable, which is the directions in what we were moving in, because we had to use a lot of things. We were talking about all the things that we had to do while we were in the pandemic.
yeah.
We had to give folks, dollars and so that they could sustain themselves while they couldn't work and things of that nature. But here we are. But
Here we are.
I say we have another chance. The chance is to make sure our voices are always heard. We need to speak up and stand up. We need to make sure that there's noise from outside and inside. And as I can often bring in my ears during that time, and when former President Obama would talk, and he would say certain things. We talk about Project 2025 and the devastation that it would have, and we said we would stop it, and people would be clapping and yelling. And what President Obama would do at that time, he says, "Don't clap, vote."
That's right.
And we needed to come out to vote. We took things for granted and thought that, it was okay. So let's take that lesson that not only are we going to make noise in the streets, but there's not going to be an election that passes by where we don't get out and vote.
And Sunday is the vote for the big, beautiful bill. You call it the big, ugly bill.
Big ugly bill.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, Chuck Schumer reached out. We're breaking the story. Well, we broke the story. Chuck Schumer reached out to the Legacy 8 civil rights leaders and gave them a heads up. The procedural votes are starting for reconciliation, and the vote happens Saturday. You have people like Damon Hewitt saying, from the Lawyers Committee, saying it's a petri dish, that they're experimenting with Black America and all America. So, where are you with this?
Well, so the Senate votes, and then they will have to call us back at the House. So we'll probably go home on Friday, but they may call us back, Monday or Tuesday if it gets through the Senate. We want to make sure they got to make sure that happens. And what they're sending back here is just as bad, if not worse, than what we sent over there. And so then we'll see. We'll see whether or not all of our Republican friends will either stand as they initially said. They said that if, in fact, it was cutting, healthcare, Medicaid, and Medicare to great extent as it is, that they wouldn't vote for it. They said that if there was not a change in SALT, they wouldn't vote for it. They talked about other problems that they had with the bill. So we will see if, in fact, they will then go along with the Senate's version of the bill, because what they're trying to do for them, the individual who would like to be an authoritarian or trying to be an authoritarian, would love to be a king, he has given them the mandate that he wants it done by July 4th.
By July 4th.
See if, in fact, they get their act together, or they're going to stand for their country, I should say, getting their act together and not letting that big, ugly bill pass.
He called it the big, ugly bill. And David Hewitt says the kneecap to America bill, or the kneecap America bill. That's what he calls it. Well, you called him the king. Over at NATO, they called him daddy. I don't call him either. I call him Mr. President. My daddy was a Black man who provided for me, and he's long gone.
I said, wanna be king. He's not a king. You want to be a king. I want to be authoritarian, but we're not going to go sit back and let that happen.
Want to be, but we're not want to be here. Congressman Greg Meeks, as the president is talking about, or all of these reports that we're hearing that he's talking about, the fact that he wants to invade Mexico to get the cartels, there's concern about boots on the ground, not drones, American soldiers marching, moving into Mexico. What are your thoughts? What are your fears about this?
One, I think Congress should immediately strike that down. Again, putting America's troops in harm's way when there is no aggression, we have no jurisdiction there or anything of that nature, taxpayers' money and things of that nature. And I think it would be awfully dangerous on the president's part, because I would hope that his party would stand up, because our blood would be on our hands if American troops go there and are killed for a war, because that's what basically is when you send our troops on the ground that is not an imminent threat to the United States and not authorized by the United States Congress.
I thank you so much for always allowing me to talk to you, especially after that major day. But you are such a statesman, and we come to you because you tell us the truth and you give us everything in layman's terms so people can understand what's happening around the world and how it impacts us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And enjoy.
Thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. Did your wife believe that day that I grabbed you?
She did. She heard her. Did they let you back into the White House to ask your probing questions of this president? Have they allowed you back in?
I'm back in, but guess what? They don't call on me. I'm there. They don't call, they scared of me. They don't call on me, and they don't want me in the Oval Office. But guess what? I'm still reporting and still reporting and
Come on
still
now.
breaking news. That's what we do. They're afraid of excellence.
And truth.
And truth. That's right. That's right. Because they know I'm not that one just to ask Elon Musk, oh, why aren't you wearing a suit? I'm the one. Why are you telling this lie on South Africa? Why are you doing this way? So, but I'm still there. So they haven't pulled my pass. I'm still there, but I'm still reporting. And I appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Thank you always. Thank you.
My pleasure.